is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Be sure to go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. And while you're there, go check out our pin tweet where you can see we have our year 6 of Rocking Around the 412 as our pin tweet on X, or I guess I should say pin post. We're still trying to figure out the wording for that. Yeah. And if not, it's also, if you're not on social media, you can also check it out wherever you're listening to the show, whether that's YouTube or in the listening platforms. In the description, we have the links to this GoFundMe as well. Year 6, Rock Around the 412 over the past 5 years, been able to raise over $25,000 with the help of all of you. And then we were able to provide Christmas for children in our local 724 and 412 area codes. Smitty and I never really had to worry about where Christmas was coming from growing up. And so over these past several years, we wanted to have this mission to be able to provide Christmas for these kids that aren't as fortunate as we were growing up. So if you want to read about that mission, go check that out. Like I said, it's our pin post on X, and it's also in the links. The link is in the description of each of these shows, as well as the Everything Custom Design links. We've got an Etsy link and a Facebook link. Our friend Haley Wagner, it's almost Halloween time. It's getting closer and closer, so you can get a customized trick-or-treat bag for your kids. She also does customized clothing, whether it's T-shirts, hoodies, stuff like that. You can also get a customized kitchen apron. Thanksgiving is rolling around the corner right after Halloween, so there's all sorts of stuff that Haley Wagner can be able to do. My mom has even bought stuff from Haley, so go check that link out. As long as you don't want a hat, she can get you covered.
Yep, anything but a hat, pretty much. But if you do want a trick-or-treat bag, I would get on that soon, because 20 days.
I mean, we're only a couple weeks away, so
a lot of different orders for them. So I would hurry up and do that. Yeah, actually, too. I hope that I can reveal it hopefully in the next episode. But Kaylee's working on a poster right now for Rock Around the 412. So
okay,
that should be done, and I can put that up and show you guys what that looks like. But like we said, we know we're gonna do the Penguin tickets. We know we're gonna do an Eric Carlson jersey. Maybe people after watching that home opener not as excited about those two prizes at the time being, but but things are gonna get better, I think. We'll talk about that in the Penguin show, though. This is the Steelers show, so let's dive into some Steelers talk. What a roller coaster season this has been. I mean, literally every single week, it just seems like, the season's over. Nope, we're back. Season's over. We're back again. I would say that we're kind of on the we're back train at this point in time, beating the Ravens, a division rival at Acrisure. Late heroics from Kenny Pickett to George Pickens, and then of course the defense standing tall again. Great in the second half. Kind of just going over everything right now broadly, and then we'll dive into it more. I think that, again, if you're looking at the Steelers season as a whole and see that they're 3-2, the way that we've talked about them on the show, that would be very surprising to you. When you see the point differential, that would be very surprising to you. When you realize that the Steelers have just found a way to do this now for like 4 seasons, playing like this game in and game out, that shouldn't be surprising to you. So basically everybody besides Pittsburgh Steelers fans, you should be shocked that they're 3-2 right now.
Yeah, and what's funny is, like, I saw people saying, and it's not just a few people, it's several saying, like, this is not sustainable. And even people who are in like bigger media say like this is not sustainable for what the Steelers are doing. And I'm like, if you go back to 2019, the Steelers have pretty much shown that this is sustainable to a certain extent. Like, obviously you want a better offensive production, you want a better offensive performance, and you don't want your defense and your special teams to have to carry you every single time. But they've shown that at least when it comes to still having winning seasons or not having a losing season, they could surprise people, and it's sustainable to an extent. Obviously, you and I don't want it to be that way. We want the team to improve, but it is interesting to me because, like, thinking back, we really have had basically the same scenario even before Matt Canada, when we had Randy Fichtner as well. Just basically going back to that first year of 2019 where Ben gets out with the elbow injury. And that's the first year where we could really see the regression of the offense. Obviously, with Ben coming out, that's going to have the main effect from that. But then even when Ben came back in 2020, 2021, you had the last year of Randy Fichtner, and then the first year of Matt Canada. Still, the offensive production was not what it was in like the Killer B area. It was like night and day different. And so then to see what they are now with having Mitch Trubisky start last season and then moving into Kenny Pickett, and now we have year 2 of Kenny Pickett also under Canada. We just have gotten used to the lack of offensive production. And I feel like the team has also gotten used to it, and they must have, because they're still finding ways to win games. I mean, if you look at the way the game played out, there's almost no reason the Steelers should have won that game. And I'll be honest, I didn't think that they were going to win the game because I was camping in the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas. I didn't watch the game live. I didn't have enough service. I tried to watch it, couldn't happen. So I was able to see the score a little bit on my phone, and I saw that eventually, like, I was thinking it was in the second quarter, it was 10-0, and I just thought, okay, they're just not going to be able to necessarily keep up, even though that's not a big deficit. Like, I just feel like the offense is not going to move the ball. And then I saw eventually that, okay, it's at first I saw it was like 10-5, and I'm like, how the heck did we get to this? And then I realized Miles Killebrew is that dude. But then to have the Steelers come back the way they do, I end up seeing that they win the game. And luckily, I'm thankful that the NFL puts out those condensed games on YouTube that's like 40 minutes long where I can watch the whole thing again. Otherwise, I'd basically be watching a highlight package, so I wouldn't actually see like some of the nitty-gritty stuff. But the fact that the Steelers won this game is just basically a testament to what they've been doing for the past 5 years, essentially. Is like their defense is going to keep them above water just enough for the offense to do the little thing that they can do. To
the bare minimum. Yep.
The absolute bare minimum. There's no, like, that play, the single play, the Kenny Pickett to George Pickens, that play itself, fantastic. But despite that, the offense did not have another good production, even though they won the football game. Like, this was not a good offensive performance, and there's still a lot to complain about when it comes to the offensive performance. But the fact that they win this game, it's almost not surprising anymore. That, like, this is just kind of the way it goes, especially in a Baltimore-Pittsburgh game, because I feel like this is just the way it has been for the past several seasons. Baltimore looks like they're outplaying Pittsburgh. They're going to have the lead for the majority of the game, and then somehow we're going to win the game. That's kind of the formula I felt like it's been for the past recent years, even though Baltimore, you could say, in areas outplayed the Steelers, especially offensively. Although I will say the Steelers listened to me on my my keys to the game defensively. They won the turnover battle. So when you do that, the Steelers are set up to be able to have success in that, where that's the way the defense is going to keep them in the games, is when they get those splash plays and those turnovers, including the special teams as well. I can't forget Miles Killebrew, that block punt for the safety, elite. And he I'm sure we're going to talk about him, but there's several things in this game that were done right. The offense is not one of them still, but the fact that they won this game, it's surprising, but at the same time, it's not.
You'd rather be complaining about the offense coming off of a win. Everything is just, you'd rather be able to say, okay, here's what they still need to do differently, better, well, but they got to win out of it. When you look at this game, I did think in the second half they were running the ball a bit. I think Jaylen Warren was a spark plug for this game. I thought, offensively, he kind of turned the tide. George Pickens obviously was George Pickens too. I'm very pleased with the progress he's made in year two, and maybe isn't always going to be there in the box score because of the offense that he plays in, but very clearly he has taken a year two leap, and I'm excited about what he's going to be able to do with getting Deontay Johnson back on the other side after the bye week. But let's start with the offense, because I feel like there's less of a performance to talk about there from the offense, really just the one big play. That play has been widely talked about within the fan base, and I don't necessarily want to harp on it, but I don't know that. And again, I always feel like I'm talking down to people when I'm trying to explain something, but I'm absolutely not. I'm sure there's scenarios where people could explain something to me and make me feel like an idiot, but people that are calling it an audible don't know what an audible is. I don't think, anytime that something is changed doesn't make the play an audible. What they did on that was they saw cover zero, which they installed in practice. Hey, if the Ravens give us this look, because they're probably going to, Patrick Peterson even said, Tomlin told us during the week, we're going to see this late if we have a lead, because Baltimore is going to be looking like they're going to get desperate. They're trying to take the ball away. Pittsburgh's on the edge of field goal range already at this point. So if they go into straight man, cover zero, no safety help over top, this is the look. It's not like Kenny has an option to do something differently there. That is what he's supposed to do. That's the one and only thing that's supposed to happen. Supposed to slide the protection to the right. That's what the Randy call is. And then Pickens goes on a go route because of that. It's not like he changed the route separately. That is a built-in hot route which, by the way, hot route, also separate than an audible. It's just one guy's route changing on the play. George Pickens in this scenario, but that's built into the offense already. It's not like Kenny Pickett's going up there and changing a bunch of things, totally changing the play because of what the Ravens showed him. No, he changed it because in practice, along with Matt Canada, who installed this check, they said, this is what we're going to go to if we see cover 0. I'm not saying Matt Canada is some genius for installing a very fundamental check into the offense, because this is stuff that happens in high school. But I am saying that if you're trying to give Kenny credit for doing so, I mean, it's Matt Canada, the one that's putting it in there. That's a built-in check within the offense. It's not Kenny doing some rocket scientist stuff because of what the defense showed him.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I feel like that is something that, and it's hard to like say something like that, like you said, without seeming like you're a jerk or like talking down to
I know.
somebody.
Yeah, I mean,
like it's
I
a
felt
very
terrible.
awkward.
I felt weird explaining that right now. Like,
yeah, but it's true, because when you think about an offense, even when there's better quarterbacks than Kenny Pickett, like even like Hall of Fame quarterbacks, whenever they are audibling, they have to, like, the rest of the offense has to know what that audible means. And so that's coming from an actual offensive game plan, not just the quarterback making the decision to audible. Because if it was just the quarterback making that audible and it wasn't coming from the offensive like coordinator or the offensive scheme itself, then how does anybody else know what to run if he calls that audible? So I feel like that's something that kind of gets overlooked at times. Again, it's we're not trying to say like people are dumb, but like you just it is built into the offense for that way for it to happen. I mean, the only time realistically that quarterbacks are calling their own plays or running their own stuff is like if you have a veteran quarterback, like Ben in 2-minute drills was known for, he would call his own plays at times. But like even Ben, with the Hall of Fame career he had, if he audible, that's coming from the offense because the other players have to know what to do. So that play, yeah, I saw people, and I saw all the reaction to Matt Canada's reaction, and that was, I mean, it was entertaining to see people freak out about that, but I don't really think that's that big of a deal. And I saw Alan's rants about the whole thing.
Yeah,
if you haven't, go check that out because it's pretty entertaining to see. You hardly get a word in, and Alan just basically
it was
on.
It was like 15 minutes of him talking just straight.
It was really great.
It was very informative, even for somebody to me that like consumes so much of this stuff and likes to think that I know, a good bit of the X's and O's and stuff that goes behind the scenes. But that just goes to show, man, like you're talking about one guy, or just, one little tweak on offense. There's 11 of these guys that have to all do one job in unison. That's what I love about football. It's the ultimate team game. Like these guys all had to be on the same page with this. And that's why it's like, I don't even know. Okay, say that Kenny did audible it or whatever you want to call it and change something. And it's like, okay, if a second-year quarterback had the wherewithal to do that, if a second-year receiver made the play, if they executed it perfectly, if this offense did everything perfectly, that's a good, like that's not a bad indictment on the offensive coordinator. That's their coach. Like that's the guy that they would have been practicing with a week. He should get credit for them going out and executing as well. Like, so I don't know what the negative part about that specific thing would be for Matt Canada. Again, I'm not trying to like call him some savant, come to his defense or anything like that. I'm just stating facts here. And like anything that does go well for this offense, he also has a hand in. Like he's the offensive coordinator.
And that's the problem that people have is like, no matter what, they want something to be wrong with Canada, even if it's something that Canada did well in that sense. And I'm not saying like that was like all on Canada. Like Kenny made the throw, Pickens caught the ball and everything. Like it was Canada's offense. That's all we're trying to say. And also, like I thought what Alan was saying too. I keep referencing Alan. If you don't know, Alan Saunders, Pittsburgh Sports Now. We say Alan a lot as if everybody just knows who we're talking about. Alan Saunders, Pittsburgh Sports Now. Go check out his stuff. Go check out Steelers Afternoon Drive with Smitty and Alan as well. You can go search that on YouTube. But if you listen in the rant, he's talking about how like Matt Canada also has a job to do in that very moment. Like because
it's immediately he's got to be thinking about the 2-point play.
He can't be in the fan perspective like some of those other guys in that booth can, because if they're just like either scouts or offensive analysts that work throughout the week, like they don't have that responsibility, so they can do whatever they want. Canada, and like there's a reason you see coaches, unless it's like a walk-off touchdown or a walk-off field goal or walk-off like fourth down stop or essentially like that, like you are not going to see coaches react the same way because they're working. Like they have to be focused about what's going on. So I think it's not a lot of it got overblown, and it's a too big of a conversation about that video of Matt Canada in that instance. But I mean, good check, Kenny.
He deserves credit for realizing
he did the job of the offense and how it was supposed to be run.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Kenny, 4 fourth quarter comebacks, 5 game-winning drives, and just 17 career starts. That's what keeps you hanging on, right? As to like why we feel like we don't have an answer yet as to if he is the guy or not, because he could play like trash for 50 plus minutes. But as long as the defense keeps it close, you feel like if they get his football in the hands when it really matters, he's going to give you a late score to win a football game.
That's the annoying
that's why
part.
It's just like
why can't he do it for the other 55 minutes?
You need an answer on to if this is the guy or not, and he's given you just enough to keep some hope that he can be. And again, like, can we really definitively know playing within the constraints of a Matt Canada offense? Probably not. But there's a lot of things that have been, Kenny's doing, Matt Canada aside, that have made me question if he is the guy or not. But then he does something like this, in a big moment, making that throw. Again, that's still him that has to realize what the Ravens are in, what the coverage is, and change that at the line. I trust him at the end of games, and it's just so weird because that's typically the last thing, or maybe doesn't come along at all for NFL quarterbacks. And he basically came into the league with that ability, that clutch gene. It's just, man, for the first 3.5 quarters, are we going to be able to get it to a point where it's going to matter what he does in that last half of the fourth quarter?
Yeah, and like you said, it's not all on Kenny. Like there are definitely things with the offense, like what Matt Canada is calling, and then stuff with his offensive line, that there's definitely issues, and you can't all put the picture all together, whether Kenny's the guy or not because of it. But at the same time, like you said, there's things that we have discussed and things that many people have like pointed out this year that are concerns, much like the accuracy issues early on, which he has seemingly fixed overall.
Yeah, I would say,
for the most part, the accuracy is not as much of an issue anymore. A lot of it is still just some of the decision making on his throws, like who he's throwing it to, not whether the ball's accurate or not. Like, should he have made that throw, or some of his reads are should be different. And then phantom pressure just seems to be something that he has to work out of, because he makes pressure, or he makes himself feel more pressure than he needs to in certain moments. I mean, we talked about it last week where he spun into a sack that got him injured, and that's because he
almost did it
too early.
Did you see you watched the condensed game? Did you see the one
where
he
kept himself from doing it?
He threw it away on 3rd down and they kicked a field goal, but he like almost drifted and spun, and then spun back around the other direction, then threw it away.
It's like he reversed what he was doing. He reversed his mindset. He's like, I can't be doing this. But that's something that Kenny has to work through, because if you're the guy, like, you can't be feeling that pressure when it's not there. Sure, it's on its way, but it's not there yet. You have to feel comfortable in stepping up in the pocket, not trying to escape it. And I know going back to Pitt, a lot of Kenny's best moments were whenever he did get out of that pocket, and it was kind of like the backyard football. But this isn't Pitt. This is the NFL. You can't be doing that. These edge defenders are just absolute freaks. They're going to catch you. So I don't know. It's tough to say. Looking at what we've seen so far from Kenny, like, obviously there's some good signs, and like that play in itself was a good thing to see from Kenny. But overall, there's just things that are still kinks that Kenny can work out despite what's going on all around him. Because I understand he might not trust his offensive line in certain spots completely, but sometimes the pressure is made up in his own head, and he's trying to escape it when it's not there yet.
I think that was a good point about Pitt, is because, he was just so much better than his competition most games that he was able to get away.
I mean, he
with
was a
lot of
Heisman
those
finalist.
Yeah.
Let's just say he was a finalist for the best player in college football. Like he was easily he is Pitt's and then shout out to Allen's being brought up a lot on the show. His senior year at Pitt, he led 7 clutch like fourth quarter comebacks, which is over double than anybody else in Pitt history. He is the ACC all-time touchdown scorer in a single season. Like was that dude in college, and but just because you're that dude in college, like there's still huge adjustments.
Yeah, so he has tendencies that I think carried over from his time there. He was able to get away with a lot more stuff in his college tenure that he's not going to at this level. So we'll see if he can break that. But yeah, I'm excited to see what they look like coming out of the bye, because the bye week is a great week to do some self-scouting, realize what's worked, what hasn't worked. I mean, if you look back at the Steelers bye last season, obviously came a little bit later than when it did this year. But that point aside, what it really is it gives you the opportunity to look at plays that have worked for you, plays that haven't worked for you, maybe double down on some, maybe throw some away. And just this is the time where they're going to make some adjustments. On top of that, getting Deontay Johnson back, like I mentioned earlier, should get James Daniels back at that right guard spot too. And I don't want to diminish the value of getting Presley Harvin back either when you look at what he was able to do, after what's been a pretty tumultuous tenure so far with the Steelers, pretty up and down, looks great in practice, hasn't really transferred over to games more often than not, but he's been good this year when he's been on the field. So hopefully that hamstring is healthy and he's ready to go. I would say letting go of Brad Wing is a pretty good indication they feel like he's going to be able to return for this Rams game. But I just feel like Deontay especially, man, has been severely missed. I'm not making excuses for this offense. I still don't think they're going to be even like a league average offense. But what he can do, he's a quarterback's best friend, especially when they've also not had Pat Freiermuth. And I just think that he's going to really open up things for George Pickens, who's seen a lot of double teams in the absence of Deontay and still had 200-yard games in that time. So I'm really excited for what those two are going to be able to do together and what they offer to this offense, kind of some explosive down the field shots with George, and then you got your underneath safety blanket in Deontay. I think they complement each other well. So I'm excited to see how this offense looks coming out of the bye. I think that we should see a lot of different the one thing that I will give the Steelers credit for in terms of their offense. Now, the success of it may not be there. It's varies as well, but they run pretty much every type of run concept that you can. They don't stick to just one. Now, are they all successful? No. Maybe some of those do get scrapped during the bye, but they run pretty much everything.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they're not shying away from anything in the playbook. I feel like this year they definitely took the training wheels off. So I think that's a good thing you could say about the offense, that they will try anything. You mentioned Deontay Johnson coming back. I think that's huge for not only George Pickens, like you were mentioning, but just Kenny Pickett. And you mentioned that he's like a quarterback's best friend. I think that someone who has suffered from read issues like Kenny has is going to like having someone like Deontay come back. Just the ease of being able to get open for a guy. And knowing that, like, if I look this guy's way, he's going to be open for me. You can't always say that, even with a guy like George Pickens, even though if you throw him, he might just catch it, even if he's not open. But Deontay Johnson I feel like more often than not, is going to find the open space for a guy like Pickett. It's going to make this a lot easier for him. I feel like he's going to be able to feel more comfortable sitting back there, knowing that if his first read isn't there, if it's not Deontay, he can just go to him. He doesn't have to dump it off to the running back, because more often than not, he's going to be open. So I think that not only does it do great things for Pickens, because it's kind of like on the defensive side of the ball, whenever like TJ's out, it hurts Highsmith a little bit, just because you don't have that focus on the other side. And so now that you're getting Deontay back, defenses are going to have to worry about that. And then the route running ability of him, it's going to open up things for Pickett. It's Pickens, and he's going to make things easier for Pickett in this offense. I think this Steeler fans don't really realize too much, or they don't want to give enough credit to Deontay Johnson about how good he is, especially whenever he's paired with another receiver like George Pickens. Like, I feel like people will look at the flashiness of George Pickens and just undervalue what Deontay Johnson brings a lot of the time.
Yeah. I mean, we said this probably could be the year that the torch gets passed where George Pickens is their number one wide receiver, especially with the connection that he seems to have with Kenny Pickett. But going into the season, we said Deontay Johnson, until proven otherwise, was still this team's number one wide receiver. He still probably could lead them on a target per game basis. I don't know if he'll lead them at the end of the year based off the time that he missed in total targets, but per game, he still might. And even so, like, okay, if George Pickens is the number one, who cares? Like, Deontay Johnson is still very much valuable to this offense. The last thing I want to bring up on the offensive side of the football before we switch gears, Broderick Jones making his first start. I don't know how you felt. Again, you didn't get to watch the full thing, just watching the condensed game. Super impressed. I thought he was awesome, and I'm pleasantly surprised by that as well. Like, not like I thought he was going to be like absolutely atrocious, but we thought he was going to have, some growing pains and take his lumps at this level. I didn't see it. Jadeveon Clowney is a veteran who's having actually one of his better years in terms of a pass rusher. He's always been a really good run defender, but maybe hasn't lived up to that pass rush upside. But he's been good for the Ravens this year, and Broderick Jones was dominant in that matchup. So I'm very pleased with what I saw.
I am too. I think that gives you a little bit more of a secure feeling about not only just the pick in general, but like where he is as a player. And don't get us wrong. Like, if we can go back, we'd still start Dan Moore Jr. If Dan Moore Jr. had won the job out of camp again, we'd still start him again. It's not like a quarterback situation for what we had last year where we were questioning it. Like, I feel like it was still the smart decision. You didn't need to start Broderick, but the fact that he's showing the way he is this early, he's not really showing like he's out of place or seems lost in some of the protections. He's holding his own, and against some good players too, like you were saying against Clowney. That's something that's really important for the Steelers, not just because of how it's important for the offense, but just that's your number one pick. Like that's your first round pick.
Yeah.
You want him to do good, and that's the highest lineman they've picked in a really long time. So the fact that he's able to perform well on Sunday, that just speaks volumes to what they thought of him in the draft and what kind of player he is. So it's a good thing.
The Rams don't have an edge rusher that I know is going to be like a great test, but that Jaguars the following week, Josh Allen's a heck of a player. And you got, Trayvon Walker, who they spent the number one pick on. I don't know if they should have done that, but they did. So I think there's going to be Titans have Harold Landry and some other guys along that D line. So there'll be some tougher tests. I think that this was the plan, though. And I want to bring that up real quick, and then we'll transition to the defensive side because there's two guys within this. But Alan and I talked about this because we actually got a really good comment from one of our viewers from YouTube. Colton S412 was his name. And he was basically saying, I know that Steelers fans have been clamoring for Broderick, for Joey, for Keeanu Benton, those guys to, be starters, get more playing time, whatever it might be, depending on obviously varying levels there for those three guys. But is there something to be said about the way the Steelers have brought them along slowly? And is that why they are getting the most out of them right now, is because of the slow development and willing to wait on these guys to be brought along? And I thought that was a really interesting and good point, because who knows what happens if we throw to these guys, all these guys to the fire in week one. If Broderick really struggles in week one and going against that crazy San Francisco front, or if, Joey gets torched in week one at a position like cornerback where it's like a very mentally challenging position, and like, I'm not saying Joey's mentally weak. I think the opposite, honestly. I think that he's got some of that dog in him to be able to bounce back. But I think bringing them along the way they have has set them up nicely, like coming off this game, especially against the Ravens, where Broderick had a great game, Joey had a great game, Keeanu had a great game, and then you get the bye week to like really reflect on that game that you had. I think there's something to be said about the way the Steelers have brought those guys along this way.
I think so too. We mentioned in football, like kicking, and there's other positions in other sports that like are so like mental, but really all positions are mental. Like there's still a mental side that you have to have in order to perform well. So the fact that they were able to hold those guys out and get them to a good place where they felt like they could bring them in and they performed well, that helps them mentally, which is going to help them moving forward. Like you were saying, like if you bring in Broderick Jones, Joey Porter Jr. in week one, and they just get absolutely torched. I mean, just looking at the corner position, we saw what a guy, and whether you think he should have been drafted there or not, but like Artie Burns, for example, we saw what like the confidence issues had for him. He was basically a shell of a corner out there towards the end of his Steelers tenure. And a lot of that, I feel like, just because he was drafted way too early than he was supposed to because the Steelers panicked at that pick. And he just had a lot of pressure on him, and mentally that messed him up as a corner. So you see what it can do to guys in those positions. The fact that they're able to hold them out the way they do, and when they do come in, they perform well. That just gives you a lot of mental confidence moving forward. Like, hey, I am that guy. Like I can do well in this league, and they're not thinking like I shouldn't be here or I'm just not going to be able to get it. Like, no matter what the position, if you have those thoughts, or even if they still believe that they are a good player and people believe they're a good player, if you have any of those thoughts in your head, then that's going to hurt your game, especially against better competition. So I think that that's a good thing for the Steelers, that the way they handled it, because you don't need to rush these guys. You want them to be able to perform to the best of their abilities when they do get their chance. You don't want to rush things. Like I was just saying, like if I could go back, Dan Moore Jr. would still start the season at left tackle for me. I'm not going to say I would have started Broderick Jones from week 1 just based off of one performance he had in week 5. I still think that it's a good thing that he got to that point. But the fact that he is now in at week 5 because of an injury to Dan Moore Jr. and what we saw from him, that makes us confident that he can do it moving forward, and we don't have to just revert back to Dan Moore Jr. as soon as he comes back healthy. So I think it's a smart thing that the Steelers did that. I think it's a good thing for the players themselves and their mental state moving forward.
Yeah, and we couldn't have predicted a Dan Moore Jr. injury. I don't think that we expected Levi and Patrick Peterson to play the way that they have, which has put, people probably would have been clamoring for Joey Porter Jr. to play early regardless. I mean, you spend pick 32 on him, but I think the play of those two has really elevated. Yeah. The play of those two has really elevated the desire to see him put into a higher position on the depth chart. And then with Keeanu Benton, I mean, had to. Like, Cam Hayward's injury has kind of thrusted him into a more prominent spot too. So, but yeah, the early returns on those guys have all been great. I really want to talk about Joey Porter Jr. though. It's funny. I'm saying like I enjoy the way that they've brought him along to this point, but I do think it is time to hand him the keys. I don't think that the performance from the other guys has been good enough to keep him off the field. I think that he's shown that he's capable of handling the job in front of him. We've talked about this before too. A lot of what you do as a Pittsburgh Steeler is going to be defined by what you do in the division. And when you do, specifically in this Ravens matchup, and for him to already have that moment of an interception of Lamar Jackson on 3rd down in the end zone when the Ravens could have basically put this game away, is a great start for him to his Pittsburgh Steelers career. I understand, it's going to be an interesting conundrum for the defense because Levi and Pat are more zone corners, like especially Pat. Like Pat can't play man at this point in his career, and Joey's a man heavy. Like he's a pressman. He wants to get his hands on you at the line of scrimmage, be physical. That's what he excels at. So it's going to be interesting to see how they balance that. Like, are they going to play zone on one half of the field and man on the other half of the field? It's going to be interesting to see. I just don't think that there's a better option. I think Joey Porter Jr. has shown through his playing time to this point, really taking another step in this Ravens game, that he is their best option at corner, despite him only getting how many snaps? He's played less than 100 snaps. He's played like 86 snaps or something like that. But I think it's pretty clear that he is their number 1 corner.
I think he is too. And I think that going back to what I was just saying, like I think it's a good thing that you didn't put that pressure on him early, because not only, and I just mentioned it while you were talking too, not only is he like the 32nd overall pick, but like he has that legacy name with Joey Porter Jr. With the Steelers. There's a lot of expectations that will come with that. So I think while it's still a smart thing, what they did, I think I agree with you. It is time to let the training wheels off and give him the keys. I think that he is their number 1 corner. He's shown that, especially in this game and in making those big moments. And according to snaps, let's see, snap count, he has 86 snaps. Yep.
He's allowed a 0.0 passer rating.
Yeah. So I think that it's a smart thing to do. You've seen the play from Levi Wallace to Patrick Peterson. It's less than what you were hoping you would be getting. So I think that you need to see more of Joey Porter Jr. Especially if you want to continue to have your defense carry your team in general. You have to put the best guys out there. Otherwise, that's going to be setting you up for failure. Not even from a defensive standpoint, but just from an overall team standpoint, based off how we've seen the Steelers are going to be winning these games.
And with Keeanu Benton, man, I feel like that's a pick that we're going to be talking about for a long time. I think if the season ended right now, obviously we're only 5 games into it, he's their rookie of the year. I know that it's, the snaps we could go through and stuff like that. But from game 1 to where we are now, I feel like he's been their most consistent. I think he's been an asset the entire time, not to Joey or Broderick's fault necessarily, but those two haven't been on the field start to this point like Keeanu Benton has. So I just think he's been a force in the middle of that defensive line. I think we're just scratching the surface of what he can be as a pass rusher as well. He's got that really nice club swim move, but I think he's still adding to that. And I think that once Cam Hayward comes back, man, that front is going to be so much better even than they are right now. I'm really excited about the development of Keeanu Benton.
I am too. And I think when you look back to the Steelers draft this season, we talk about how good it was on paper overall. You're going to be looking back and potentially having Keeanu Benton is turning out to be what is the best pick in this draft for the Steelers. I think the return on it early is leading towards that. I mean, just the impact that he's had on this defensive line. We knew that we were getting a good player, but I don't think that we necessarily thought we would get this much of this player this early, like how good he's been this early on. So the fact that they're able to get that, this is just another piece on that defensive front that is going to be here for years to come. And I think that when you look at this 2023 draft overall, while he's going to be definitely one of the best picks, I think he's going to be the best pick for years to come because of what he's had done early on and then what he can do into the future. And I mean, with Cam, eventually he's going to be stepping away from the game eventually. And Keeanu Benton could fill in the role of being that leading guy on the inside on that defense.
Yeah. I don't even want to think about that, but let's talk about this edge rush duo. I mean, I don't think that we can spend enough time talking about them. Making plays again that seal this win. TJ Watt, 2 sacks in this game, up to 8 on the season through 5 games. Yeah. And Alex Highsmith, who actually had a sack taken away by a Minka Fitzpatrick defensive holding, got a strip sack later in the game that iced it with TJ. Or I guess, no, it didn't ice it because we had to kick a field goal because of a flag that we took when Kenny was kneeling. So it left 40 seconds. So we had to kick a field goal, give him the ball back. Then TJ gets his second sack of the game on that drive on 4th down to ice it. So I guess it didn't necessarily ice it, but it put it pretty well in hands. Those two, man, I mean, again, we could say this every week, but pretty clear to me that they are the league's best edge rushing duo. I mean, to play on the opposite side of TJ Watt, and it can be a tough thing because you can get overlooked a lot. I feel like that's not the case with Alex Highsmith. I mean, you see, and of course we're talking about TJ's brother. So obviously he pays a little bit more attention. He's probably going to always talk about Alex in a better light than most, but he was talking about him today on Pat McAfee's show. And he was like, yeah, I think that he deserves a ton of credit for what TJ is able to do on the other side, because, you can't give TJ all the attention when you have a guy like Alex Highsmith on the other side. I mean, he's putting himself in that conversation as a top 10 edge rusher himself, even while playing on the other side of TJ Watt, which is just fantastic. It's amazing that they got both those guys. And that's why you pay 2 edge rushers. That's why you got to be okay with shelling out that money, because you're talking about impact players. Forget the position that he plays. You're talking about impact players on the defensive side of the football, which is clearly what the Steelers have prioritized, is that side of the football.
Not only that side of the football, they prioritize the way that their defense is running, getting to the quarterback. So those two positions are going to be the premium. The Steelers are lucky that they paid him when they did, because based off this season, the price tag definitely would have been going up. So
yeah, 20. He probably could have gotten like 23 or 24 mil a season if he wanted.
Yeah. Way the contracts are being handed out now, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. But like you said, the way that even JJ recognizes what a guy like Alex Highsmith does for TJ Watt, I think that even though people recognize how good Highsmith is, they still are going to underappreciate him because he's paired with TJ. But when you look at it's kind of like Batman and Robin, just a dynamic duo, and one needs the other. Not that, okay, maybe that's an exaggeration. Comic book fans might not like that, but still, you understand my point. Like, TJ is not going to be the same without Highsmith. Highsmith is not going to be the same without TJ. But the fact that you have them together and when they're both healthy, it's an incredible duo, and that's basically how the Steelers are built to win. And we've talked about that. I talked about that in my keys to the game. Like, the Steelers are built to get turnovers, and that's what they've done in this game. That's what they've done all season, especially with those two. And so the Steelers are built to get to that quarterback and cause the chaos to be able to cause those turnovers. The defense is going to be able to be led by those two. And as long as those two are at the front of the train, pulling everything else along, the Steelers are going to be in a good position. Hopefully, the caboose of the offense starts to head a little more north. But, I feel comfortable, at least right now, with what the defense is doing, starting with those two. I mean, they've been incredible. The fact that we have both of them is just insane. And Alex Highsmith, not bad for a walk-on on Charlotte.
Absolutely not. On the show 2 times, by the way. So shout out to some around the 412 alumni showing out in the league and showing that he very much deserved that payday. Defense has been good now, really good for 3 out of the 5 weeks. Obviously, like the San Fran game, week 1, I can really understand. That Houston game is just really hard to even figure out what went wrong for them defensively.
Yeah.
I mean, I just go back to what a game plan that Bobby Slowick had to have in place there for CJ Stroud with that offensive line that was in place. But not to continue harping on the past, my only point of getting to that was to say that the special teams, to me, hasn't had that type of drop off like that. Like, they've been a consistently good group. Gunner fumble in this game aside, they've been a good group, basically from the onset of the season. A big part of that, Miles Killebrew, who is, in my opinion, which in this case is very biased. I would admit that. I try to be unbiased, but in this case, very biased because we're talking about a special teams player, is the best special teams player in the NFL. For a guy to be able to just stick on a roster, like, that his position is safe and he doesn't play any defensive snaps, like he plays like 1 a game, maybe when they're in the red zone or something like that. That just goes to show you how good he is at special teams. I mean, he is a junkie for special teams. It's basically the TJ Watt of that unit. Like, that's all he watches. They said he's like a sicko when it comes to perfecting his craft in terms of blocking punts, which shows because the Steelers have blocked 20 punts as a franchise. He's blocked 3 of those, and they've happened in the last 3 seasons. Ridiculous. Miles Killebrew is the best special teams player, maybe in Steelers franchise history, but certainly in the NFL right now.
It's hard to argue, for sure. And the fact that you have a player, like you just said, where he can show up to training camp and he's not sweating. There's nobody coming creeping down his back that they're going to take his position because of the value that he adds. I mean, having that block punt, it did so much for the Steelers in this game in terms of like turning around some of the momentum, because otherwise it was dead. I mean, I'm sure you were at the game, so I'm sure you could feel it in the stadium when something like that happens.
Not to cut you off, but so that happens. I feel like, okay, the Steelers are definitely going to win. Gunner fumbles. Oh, we're definitely going to lose. Joey Porter Jr. gets the pick. Oh, we're winning. Like, it was just back and forth for that last 7 minutes.
Also, can we talk about Gunner's fumble real quick? The way the ball just flew out. It wasn't even just like on the ground. It literally looked like he just like tossed it in the air.
Shout out to Tyler Wise, Steelers Depot. He put this out there. Gunner Olszewski has touched the ball a total of 28 times as a Steeler. He's fumbled 4 times. What are we doing? Like, why? What is he bringing to this team? Especially because you got Deontay Johnson coming back now. Like, it's not even like he provides, bottom of the depth chart wide receiver depth. Like, and Anthony McFarland back as the returner. Like, he serves no purpose on this roster at this point.
He doesn't. Especially 1 out of 7 times he touches the ball, he's going to fumble.
He was an all-pro in New England. Like, what in the world happened? Like, Danny Smith's a unit, like I just gave him credit for, has been good. But what in the world happened with Gunner Olszewski?
I don't know. He shouldn't have been. I mean, if it was you and I picking the roster, he wouldn't have been here in the first place this season.
That's true. Yeah, because, again, maybe, like, the bottom of that wide receiver, like, all those guys were so similar to me, and he was the only one making, like, significant money when I say significant, but like a couple million as opposed to
Yeah.
1 million or the minimum, yeah, he would have been a cut for me.
It makes no sense. He shouldn't touch the ball. He shouldn't be returning anything. Kicks, punts, doesn't matter. I don't think he has a place. Especially, Joey Porter Jr. saved him. Like, Joey Porter Jr. saved him. If he doesn't get that pick, then Steeler fans are going to be looking at this. I'm assuming that the Ravens either kick an extra or kick a field goal at the very least, and then if not, score a touchdown. Gunnar Olszewski's probably looked at it, if this doesn't happen and Joey Porter Jr. doesn't get that pick, is like he's the reason they lost the game, and that's going to be the blaming of the Steeler fans. So yeah, he has no purpose on this team.
Even though the offense would have still sucked, that's what it would have been. That would have been the talking point was the fact that he fumbled in that moment. So yeah. The last thing that I just kind of want to touch on is, again, with this being the bye week, this would be the week to see any changes. No, I'm not talking coaching changes. Is there anything looking at the roster right now that you think we could see? I think that we've kind of already started to see a transition. We've talked about Joey Porter Jr. We've talked about Broderick Jones, very different reasons that those two are getting the playing time that they are. But is there anything when you look at the roster you think we could see a change from the bye week to when we kick off against the Rams?
Listen, I don't know if it's because a lot of his run came in the second half where the defense is more worn out, and we are not I am not going to say he's going to be the starting running back, but I think there's a chance we could see at least the snap counts get a little more even, because Najee out-carried Jaylen Warren in this game despite having less yardage. So yeah. I'm not saying Najee is not the number one back still, or if they're not. I think it might be closer to 50-50 now. I don't know how much that is of like Jaylen when he gets those carries, he's taking advantage of the opportunity against maybe a more worn out defense in the second half. I feel like Najee early on, he's getting the full like energized defense. Obviously, I feel like it's more likely that defenses are going to wear down as the game goes on, and so that's going to be easier for certain running backs. Granted, the running backs still have to hit holes. They still have to make the plays and all that sort of stuff. He still looked good, but I'm not giving up on Najee either, but I still think that you might still see a little bit more of Jaylen Warren, even more than what we've already gotten going forward.
I think that's the plan. I think they want those two to be a pretty close to even time share, if not even then like 55-45. But and I'm not saying that you're this way. I'm just talking in general for the fan base. Najee Harris, we talked about on here, was their only good offensive player in that blowout loss to the Texans. Nobody talked about it, whether it was because they got blown out and nobody cared, or because it was Najee and not Jaylen that was the one that had the better performance. People didn't talk about it. Jaylen Warren actually lost a fumble in that game too. Nobody really talked about it because it was already a blowout. In this game, Jaylen Warren definitely looked like the more effective back, and that's the storyline for some reason now, is him being the number one running back over Najee. It just seems to be like one of those narratives that's already written for a lot of people, and that's what they're talking about. I think that they both have very defined things that they are better at than the other guy. And if you are asking Jaylen to run the football 20 plus times between the tackles, I do not think that you're going to get the performance that a lot of people think they're going to get. If you're asking Najee to go and catch, 8 passes a game or something like that, I don't think you're going to get the performance that you think you might get. So I think they very clearly have roles for both of these guys. I think they should be on the field together a lot, especially when you look at like the depleted receiver. And I know you're getting Deontay back, but like Calvin Austin, outside of that one explosive play versus the Raiders, he hasn't really brought much. I know he got hurt on Sunday. Allen Robinson, I just think it's been a weird fit in the offense. He doesn't create separation. He can move the chains and he's good in the red zone. Well, this team basically has 3rd and 11s every time it's 3rd down and they don't get into the red zone. So hasn't been a great fit there. I think to get back to the original point though, Jaylen Warren is definitely the more explosive player. I think he's the guy I get the ball to in the receiving game. But if I'm looking for somebody to pound the rock and still run between the tackles, that's still Najee Harris for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think that if I do see a change, I think that you're going to see more of an even split. And I think that's a lot of the criticism from the fan base of Najee, I feel like is a little unwarranted just because of the circumstances. A lot of what he's running through too, or what he has run through in the season.
What I wanted to point out too was, and I brought this up on today's afternoon drive, was what I would like to see is some variance, like put Jaylen Warren out there on first down to keep defenses honest. It doesn't just always have to be Najee. Throw Najee out there on third down. I just mentioned he's not going to catch like a ton of passes because Jaylen's better at it, but like Najee caught 80 some passes as a rookie. Like he can do that, show the defenses different things. If you have Najee out there first and second down and short, but it's Jaylen if it's second down and longer and then third down, that's a pretty good tell in terms of what your offense is doing on that play. So switch that up a little bit. They're both capable of playing in those situations. And that's one thing that I would like to see changed offensively. I think that more of the changes I want to talk about are on the defensive side. So if you don't have anything else offensively that you were thinking about in terms of a change, we'll go there. We only saw Desmond King play one snap in this game. The Ravens scored a touchdown on it. This is right after they listed him as a co-starter with Shannon Sullivan, who was the worst of the Steelers secondary players in terms of, and I know people are going to say what they're going to say, but again, this is just one source. I'm not saying it's the end be all. Was their worst secondary player in terms of his PFF grade from Sunday's game. There was obviously some miscommunication on that touchdown with Desmond King. Didn't seem like he was in the right spot and then didn't play again. To me, that's still probably the guy that you got to figure out a way to have be a factor for this defense, because I think he's your best rundown nickel. I think he gives you the most versatility in terms of a guy that can move inside or outside. I'm still not there and trusting Patrick Peterson due to his inability to tackle. I don't know that he's going to be a good, run down slot. I don't know how that would be the case when you look at what he's done this year in terms of missing tackles. So I think they got to find a way to get him wherever he needs to be up to speed within this. And then I'm not saying he needs to play every game. It probably should be specific. But how do you give Braden Fajoko a helmet against the Ravens and not have him play a snap? Like, what was the point of that? Like, he didn't get on the field at all. So I'm looking at those two things. And then I think the thing that's probably they're in a good place with, and I'm happy about this, is the linebacking rotation, how those three guys are playing. I think they're really starting to hit their stride there. So there's probably not anything that I would change. The only thing that I would like to see, and I don't know how you do it because they're playing so well, Highsmith and Watt, and I want it to be gradual, but I'd like to see a little bit more of Herbig as well. Like, I think that you got to start to get his feet a little bit more wet. I don't know how you do it because those two both obviously need to be playing. Maybe show them some like 3 edge looks like we saw, Highsmith's rookie year or something like that. But yeah, I'd like to see him get on the field a little bit more than he has.
Especially from what we saw in the preseason, right? And obviously, preseason, that's like a scary word now because look at what the offense did in preseason. It absolutely meant nothing. But
yeah,
from what we saw from Herbig in the preseason, there's a lot of good things that could come from him being on the field. So I agree with that one. I also agree with Desmond King. I think he needs to play more, especially now that he's basically fully cleared. He should just be their full-time guy at that position. I feel like you're not going to get anything from Shannon Sullivan. We knew that going into the season. You and I talked about Shannon Sullivan was like one of the worst players on the Vikings defense last year. So yeah, I agree with both of those changes. I want to end this episode with just a little stat of the day.
Okay.
And
Stats guy Daniel's on the hot seat right now.
It is so fun for me to look at this stat. I mentioned it in my keys, but it's a little updated stat. In 6 games against the Pittsburgh Steelers, Lamar Jackson is 2-4. He's thrown 7 interceptions, put the ball on the ground 7 times, and lost 4 fumbles. Or 3 fumbles, excuse me. I just love that.
Okay, so if you're in 2 of those games, though, hasn't he only thrown 1 pass? Like, it's really like 4 games that he's played in, which makes the turnover part of that worse.
Which makes that even worse.
Yeah.
I'll say I'm just looking at his splits by team.
Yeah, I want to say 2 of those games he's only thrown 1 pass. But what I will say about Lamar is I thought he was good on Sunday. The receivers had 7 drops, and he threw the untimely interception, which wasn't a good play. But like for the most part, I thought Lamar was pretty good in this game. Those guys just really let him down. I mean, honestly, the Ravens probably should have ran away with this game before the Steelers had a chance to win it.
Well, I saw someone on TikTok talking about how the receivers lost this game for the Ravens, not Lamar. It was basically going through every pass that should have been a catch.
Yeah. But even with that, I still agree with the general point that for whatever reason, it seems like they do
Like,
limit him better than anybody else.
And it's funny because like it's against the Steelers, so like that's with Lamar. And when they play Cleveland, Myles Garrett does nothing. And it's like certain guys that are good in the
So
general
it's got to
sense
be
of the
Tomlin,
NFL.
right? I mean, because it's not even just Teryl. Like it was when Butler was here too. Like we've been through a couple different defensive coordinators that have gone against him too. So
they just know how to limit those guys.
Yeah.
But that's
I
it.
don't know.
I just wanted to point out that Lamar's stats against the Steelers are horrible.
Not good.
And what's funny is when you compare them to what they are against the Bengals and the Browns, granted, he's played more against those two teams as well. He has more games played against them. But like the yards he's thrown for, his touchdown to interception ratio for those, and putting the ball on the ground, I mean, he hasn't fumbled against the Bengals. Like he hasn't lost a fumble against the Bengals. His interceptions are only 4 and 6 with the Bengals and Browns, as opposed to 7 with the Steelers in several less games. And then he's also thrown 12 touchdowns against the Bengals and 13 against the Browns. He's only thrown 4 against the Steelers.
Wow. And he doesn't have rushing touchdowns against us either, I feel like.
Nope. And as far as rushing touchdowns go, can I even see those? Or is this just passing? I think it's just passing right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh no, no, rushing. Let me just find it real quick. Rushing, he has 6 rushing touchdowns against the Browns and 2 rushing touchdowns against the Bengals. None against us.
Yeah. I mean, that's clearly they have something on him more so than just like the offense itself, because their offense has changed too. You know, it was Greg Roman. Now it's Todd Monken. So there's been changes on both sides, but that hasn't changed. So
Steelers are the only fan base that can call him call him a running back.
Lamar B. Yeah. All right. Anything else before we get out of here?
Nope, that's it. It's gonna be. I just had BYU's bye week. Now I'm going to the Steelers bye week. It sucks, but also at the same time, it's kind of nice to be able to watch football and not have to worry about a thing.
Yeah, we got another international game, right? Or no? Is this a week off of international? No, we do. We have Ravens. Ravens and Titans are in London.
Oh, they're in London.
There's the 2 Germany games.
Right?
Yeah, week 10 and 11 are both. There's 2 games in Germany. One of them is Dolphins and Chiefs, which is going to be awesome for those fans.
That's a good game. Yeah.
So wake up early and watch Titans Ravens. I guess we don't have to give predictions on this one. We were both wrong. We both picked the Ravens, so
we were both
happy
wrong.
to be wrong. Happy to be wrong. Also, just prefacing, no Pirates show this week, but you can go and watch the Penguin show, which will be out. Depending if you're watching this right away tomorrow. But go watch that.
Or tonight if
go
you're
watch
an
another
absolute
video.
junkie.
Yeah. So go do that. In the description of the show, you'll see year 6 of Rock Around the 412 has kicked off, probably 2 months or so that we're going to be running that from now. It's year 6. We raised over $25,000 in the first 5 years of doing so. Every single penny that is donated goes to providing Christmas in its entirety to as many children as we can in our local areas, and also helping out. We partnered last year with the East Rochester Salvation Army for their angel tree that they do at Christmas time in the name of our late friend Dalton, and we're going to continue to do that. Like I said, Kaylee was working on a flyer. Hopefully I can show you guys that next week. Her and her daughter Isla are going to be part of the mission going forward, and I'm so excited about that and to have them involved with the process. She just, like, even just from last year to where she is now, knows so much more. She's excited to actually go shopping with us and help pick stuff out for kids. So very excited for her to be part of this process. And then our friend Haley Wagner, Everything Custom Designs, the Etsy and Facebook links are in the description. Trick or treat right around the corner. Hurry up and get those trick or treat bagged orders in for custom ones through Haley. You got like 20 days until Halloween. So I don't know. And trick or treat might be before that, depending on what area you're in. So hurry up and get those orders in. Make sure she can get you a bag, get you an apron for Thanksgiving, shirts, hoodies all the time. Want a hat? Too bad, because that's not going to be through Haley and Everything Custom Designs. So you have to find somebody else.
Not lids, though.
Not lids either. Which the lids in our mall turned into a little casino.
Something's
wild.
there.
Yeah, it's wild. It's a little casino.
I guess they had to do something to bring in money to that mall.
It's actually pretty cool looking, but there's like 4 slot
just
machines
like
on each
slot
side.
machines.
Yeah.
So you just get some.
And then there's like a little lounge area with like a couch and seating and then a TV.
Man, I wonder if your
Real
dad's.
degenerates.
I wonder if that's gonna be your dad's new spot.
He took his mom to go check it out, and she won like $400. So
Well, there you go.
Yeah, they might be going there. Anyways, thank you for tuning in to another Around the 412 Steelers show. For Smitty, for Tyler, go check out another video popping up on the screen right now, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.